You can use bolds and italics in your Markdown to call attention to specific text or words in the current document. Let's take a look at the basics of working with bolds and italics, as well as some more advanced use cases. To start off, let's take a look at bold text. So in this first paragraph, we're rendering the word Alice here in bold. Bold text starts with 2 asterisks, and then it ends with 2 asterisks as well. So anything in between the sets of asterisks here is going to be rendered in bold. And we can see that over here in the rendered Markdown. Now, this could be multiple words as well. So we could actually go in here and use multiple words and make those all bold. Whenever you're adding bold text with the 2 asterisks here, you do need to make sure that immediately after the asterisk, it is having a word character. So if we had an extra space here, this is not going to be considered bold. Instead, we need to immediately have a word character, and then the text that is going to be rendered bold. And then to end things off, we also need to make sure that we have a word character and then the 2 asterisks. So if we had an extra space here, that is also not going to be considered bold. If you prefer, you can also use underscores instead of the asterisk. So if we went in here, we can actually use 2 underscores instead of the asterisk here. And this will also be rendered as bold. The 2 render the same way. Now with either syntax, the bold text can itself contain other markup as well. So you could have a bold link, for example, here. So let's just go back to using the asterisk. And if we wanted Alice to be a link here, we could just go and use the standard markup syntax here. So this would be our link syntax. And now this is being rendered as a bold link, for instance. So we can use other markup inside of the bold text itself. And for links specifically, you can also use the bold syntax as the link text. So if we wanted the entire line here to be a link, we could just go and use the bolds inside of the link text. Now, this entire piece of text here is being considered a link, but only the sections that are surrounded by the 2 asterisks are actually considered or being rendered bold. With all of the inline elements like bold or italic, these only work with a single paragraph of text. So if you wanted to make, let's say we wanted the entire document here to be bold, we can't just go and add 2 asterisks at the start and then 2 asterisks at the end. This will not be rendered correctly. So the bold only applies within a single paragraph of text. If we wanted to make everything bold here, we could go in and just make this paragraph bold and then make this paragraph bold as well. So that's the basics of bold text. So let's look at italic now. Now, italic text works the same way, but instead of 2 asterisks, we're just going to use a single asterisk. So here you can see we have the word loved that is surrounded by a single asterisk on each side. This is going to be rendered in italics. And the same also works, the same rules apply where we can have multiple words that are going to be rendered. We just always want to make sure that the start character or the start asterisk is immediately followed by some text, and then the end asterisk is preceded by some text as well. So this is now going to all be rendered as italic. Just like with bold, we can also swap out the asterisk for underscores. So if we wanted, we could instead use underscores here. And now this is going to be rendered the same way, also in that italic text. Now, what if you wanted text that was going to be both bold and italic? Well, it's pretty straightforward, and it's kind of what you would expect. You can just use both the bold syntax and the italic syntax together. So let's go back to using the asterisk here. And we're just going to use 2 asterisks to start the bold text, and then an extra asterisk to start the italic text. And we'll do the same at the end here. So we'll have 3 asterisks in a row. This text is now going to be rendered both bold and italic. So you can see we have bold text over here that is also italicized. We can also go and have different ranges in our text be treated in different ways. So if we wanted only the first word here, loved, to be in bold, we could go in here, get rid of the extra 2 asterisks at the end. Again, this is going to make the entire span here italic. And then to go and make the first word bold, we're going to use 2 asterisks at the start and then 2 asterisks at the end of the first word here. Now we have the first word, which is both bold and italic, and then the rest of the text here, loved to solve, is all being rendered as italics. We could even go in and have multiple different bold ranges within the text. So we could have solved also be rendered in bold, so go add the 2 asterisks around this as well. And now both of these words are going to be rendered in bold, while the entire little sentence here, or section of the sentence, is going to be rendered in italics. If you ever run into a case where something is incorrectly being treated as bold or italic, and you actually just want to render a literal asterisk or a literal underscore, that is also pretty easy to do. So we'll just go back here and let's just have loved here with the single italicized word here. So we're just italicizing love. Now, if we wanted this to instead be rendered with literal asterisks so that we also saw them over here, we can just go before the character that is starting the italicized text here and add a backslash. And we'll do the same for the ending character here, which in this case is not actually necessary, but it is helpful just to be consistent in this instance. You can see that now the literal asterisks are rendering over here. The same also works for the underscores, and this is probably where it's more useful. So if we had text like this with the 2 underscores on either side, and we really want the underscores to actually show up in the resulting text, we can go and add a backslash escape to the before the underscore, and now this underscore is going to be treated as a literal underscore, and you can see the text now has the underscores in it as well. As a final note, even though I've been using the words bold and italic to describe what is happening, the actual behavior is a little bit more complicated. So really, instead of creating bold or italic text, you're creating text with emphasis or text that is marked strong in HTML. And we can actually go and see that. So let's go back to our original document here. So we'll have loved there, and then Alice is going to be bold. And if I bring up the common mark spec here, we can actually go and paste this in and look at the resulting HTML. Now you can see that on this first line here, so on our first paragraph with the bold text, it is not using a bold tag. It is using the strong tag. It is going to be rendered in bold by your browser. But if you're wanting to style the bold text in some different way, you would have to make sure that you would use the strong tag in your CSS. And the strong element here in HTML actually does have a semantic meaning as well. It's indicating that this is something that should have emphasis in the text. The same is happening for the italicized text down here. So you can see on the second paragraph, which is over here, this text is not using the I HTML element, which is for italic text. It is using the EM tag, which is the emphasis element in HTML. Again, it is going to be rendered by browsers as italic text almost all the time, but it is letting the browser also know that this text should have emphasis in it instead of just being treated as italic text. So it does have a semantic meaning as well. Just something to keep in mind, and if you're ever trying to write CSS for your Markdown and are confused why it's perhaps not working as you would expect, make sure to inspect the actual markup to see the generated HTML. So that's a quick introduction to how you can bold and italicize text in Markdown.